Chained Heat. Now that's a title that will instantly give you an idea of what is to come. Is a 1983 movie about a young girl, played by Linda the Exorcist Blair, who ends up in a women's prison after killing a man. Now, if you know a little bit about women's prison, you'll know that these are dangerous places where girl gangs try to beat Agatha senseless and have copious sex, where the guards and wardens are evil conniving sex fiends, and where all kinds of justice is absent. Gratuitous shots and lush bouncy breasts will urge our heroine to take action and fight injustice as girlfriends around her are killed after being swept up by the evil that controls them. Linda Blair, being typecast as an innocent girl in distress, doesn't seem to fit in this movie, and told reporters in an interview that the original script didn't resemble anything that it turned out to be. Adding new destins and changing other stuff, she was pretty much told to do a shower scene or never work again. One can only wonder what the first script looked like, but I can safely say that there are worse scripts out there, making Chained Heat a fairly enjoyable movie. I'm not a big fan of Linda Blair's acting chops, and to me she's the lesser part of the movie. The rest is just schlocky entertainment with beautiful women all over the place. When you watch a movie like this, you know what you're getting into, and though not the best in the genre, I can very much recommend it. Chained Heat. What a title. Check that. Chained Heat 2 is the sequel to the 1983 prison sexploitation movie Chained Heat. This time it takes us to the far-away and strange country of Czechoslovakia, where an innocent woman gets conned and sentenced to a prison ruled by the ruthless but very sexy Magda Kasser, played by icon Brigitte Nielsen. Her sister and a couple of allies try to get her out, but will they succeed before she is put to death, or worse? And what is really going on in the prison where almost all the girls are hot, sexy women? Watch the movie and find out. I'm sure you'll be pleasantly surprised, even though you see everything coming from a mile away. Chained Heat 2 is campy, stupid and typical 90s. The sets look fake, the people are way too pretty, and it all feels like a very long episode of Red Shoe Diaries. There's more nudity in this than the previous one, though it all feels a little bit more cheap. I did rekindle my fondness of white panties thanks to this flick though. Brigitte Nielsen herself does not get nude, by the way, but everyone else, except the men, does. Chained Heat 2 is campy and only loses me towards the end, where things get preposterous and turns into a badly made action movie. Lovers of the genre, check it out. The rest, do the same. Check that. H.O.T.S or H.O.T.S is a late 70s college goofball comedy with plenty of boobies and sexual escapades, something that is part of the genre. We follow a couple of hot girls who were ejected by a stuck-up fraternity with other hot girls and decide to create a fraternity, or maternity, of their own. What ensues is a mix of Revenge of the Nerds and National Lampoons, but with cheerleaders. There's a subplot about two gangsters trying to get money, but that pretty much goes to the background. Same for all the other events that happen. Things keep happening. From parties, to wet t-shirt, to kidnapping, to skydiving, strip rugby, a bear, a pet seal, a Coneheads reference even though that movie didn't come out yet, and much more. There's a lot of jumping and hollering and party time, brah. There's boobies, ass, ugly girls kissing, typical college humor and all that good stuff. I wouldn't call H.O.T.S a good movie, but it keeps your attention. Not quite sure why, but I think having copious chests being thrown in your face has something to do with it. Eventually it all comes together, but I couldn't help but feel a bit overwhelmed by the massive the massive amount of plots going on. It's also a shame it's filmed quite dark in many scenes, which apparently was a thing back in those days, but hey, if jumping girls with knockers is something for you, then be sure to check out this movie. If you like Revenge of the Nerds, National Lampoons and others of this ilk, you'll surely get a kick out of this movie as well. Check that. Imagine landing in a world where there are mostly only women. This is what happens to Snapper, as played by Marcello Mastroianni, after he exits a train in an attempt to pursue a woman he met on that train who decided to cock-block him by leaving right at the moment he was most in heat. A train entering a tunnel should be enough symbolism to tell you what this story will be about, and there's much more to come. City of Women is a surreal journey of a womanizer entering a world of only women. From the man-hating feminists at the beginning to young teenage girls toying with men as they terrorize them by pursuing our protagonist. The symbolism in this movie is thick, very thick, thick as the thighs of beautiful Italian women parading in front of our aging but still horny lover of women. The story brings us several aspects of women, and subsequently men. As we travel from one place to the other, almost every aspect of womanhood and how men regard them will be shown, and the more time passes the crazier it gets. I'll be remiss to tell you everything cause it's a journey you will have to experience yourself, but Fellini once again created a beautifully chaotic and colorful world, almost a circus in parts, portraying a man's deepest desires. How a man pursues women in search for the perfect one only to be left baffled by another one passing the review. Subtly displayed by having three actresses return almost unrecognizable as other characters throughout the film. How this lust for women started with moments in his life in a series of memories from under the kitchen table, glances at much older women, to his first sight of a ginormous curvaceous ass in a brothel, to a widow shaking her tush as she cleans her husband's grave, and more. Apparently City of Women is frowned upon by Fellini fans, but I say poppycock. This is a multi-layered, entertaining, thought-provoking film with enough humor, mystery and plot to keep you going. Also beautiful women, tits and ass, cause we are talking about a womanizer, of course. It even features a little cameo by Casanova, who I reviewed not so long ago. Overall a very nice Italian movie, and in my book one of Fellini's best, at least from the ones I have seen. Smash that. Caged heat, you say? Heated, steamy, hot women caught in a cage? Sign me up, I say. Especially after seeing Chained Heat 1 and 2 a few days ago. Caged Heat follows the mostly same story like many prison sexploitation movies, and has a girl participating in a crime, being caught and sent to a ruthless jail where both the wardens, guards and fellow inmates will attempt to get her, and get her in many more ways than one. Unfortunately for me, this 1974 movie is more of a normal movie from that era rather than a sexploitation movie. There's very few lush scenes except for the shower scenes, and the guards aren't that extravagant in their cruelty. There's some play with who is the bad guy of the movie or not, but that's about it. It turns quickly into a sort of grindhouse crime spree movie with two pretty women, but there's not much heat to be seen. I'd at least expected an interracial titty rubbing scene or a forced copulation with an unknowing but eventually willing gas station attendant. But alas, none of that stuff, making Caged Heat merely an okay movie. Check it out if you feel inclined, but don't expect something special. Check that. Firecrosser is a Ukrainian movie about Ivan Datsenko, a World War II pilot who is in love with a beautiful woman played by Olga Grishina. War tears them apart, but there's more to the story than just this. Datsenko's girl is pursued by a man who wants her so bad he will step over the bounds of what is right and do stuff in order to get her. But the story gets more interesting and surreal. Datsenko, born in 1918, a veterinarian by profession, eventually lands himself in Canada and becomes an Indian chief. At least that's what the rumors said, as Communists Party claimed him dead and a hero of the Soviet nation despite imprisoning him in a gulag. In the 80s, however, it became more and more clear that Datsenko had been alive and well as an Indian chief. And though it cannot be proven completely, there were many eyewitness accounts and other proof that this was true. Firecrosser tells this story in a very weird and fractured way, making it somewhat difficult to see the difference between reality and fiction. But seeing Datsenko's mind itself was fractured, it kinda makes sense. It doesn't show me the amazing story of a man becoming a soldier, then a prisoner, only to end up as a chieftain in Canada with indigenous people. And it especially does not show the very cool image used for their poster and marketing material. The movie pictured in my mind didn't happen, so that's fine, but I kinda wish the movie was more like that. Check that. Spirits of the Dead is a 68 anthology movie based on some stories by none other than Edgar Allan Poe. The first story brings us Jane Fonda in her prime as a spoiled, cruel baroness who accidentally kills the man she loves and becomes haunted by a ghostly horse. The second story shows us a sociopathic kid who gets pursued by a person with the same name and face as him. Lastly, we get Terence Stamp as a drunk, almost vampiric actor who is haunted by the devil in the form of a little girl with a white ball. As you can see, the themes of the stories align somewhat, but each movie is separate in visual style and direction. The clearest deviation in style is Fellini's segment with the drunk actor, as it once again oozes Roman and Italian vibe mixed with a circus. His segment is by far the best part, partially thanks to the portrayal by the cool Terence Stamp as a tormented artist stuck in the life he has been pushed in. Bridget Bardet's story is endearing due to her presence and has some lovely moments with an enormous horse and the creation of tapestry. I like the story of this one a little bit more than the story about the man being haunted by a doppelganger, but even that segment is quite interesting, with a Damien-like kid tormenting his fellow students and later a woman played by Bridget Bardet during a card game. Spirits of the Dead is an interesting movie that's a definite watch for any fans of Poe or old school horror. The Fellini movie alone is with a watch reminiscent of certain nightmarish episodes I have seen in certain 90s series I can't remember the name of right now. Check it out. Check that. Ned Kelly, the legendary man who led a gang in Australia and was relentlessly pursued by the law for deeds he might not have done, thus making him react in such a way to prove his innocence. He was cast into legendary status by having a shootout with a homemade bulletproof suit during his final stand. This is the second movie I've seen of the character, the first one being The True History of the Kelly Gang. And this one tells the story a bit different than the other one. Not unsurprising, since the first one was a neo-punk depiction of the character and his actions, but still, what baffles me more is that Mr. Starts Me Up himself, Mick Jagger, plays the outlaw and bush reindeer. Young Jagger does a fine job acting, but he stays Mick Jagger during the whole movie. The film gets a lot of flack, not particularly due to Jagger's acting, although it plays a small part in the vitriol, but mostly because the characters speak Irish and that there's a lot of folklore music in it. I didn't mind the folklore music. Some of the songs were quite enjoyable, and I did like the fact they often spanned throughout several scenes. I can't attest either whether or not the historical facts are correct in this and whether or not Kelly spoke the Irish Jagger speaks. The Kelly family did come from Ireland, and to me it doesn't matter, especially since the other movie didn't give us a real look into the truth of it all either. The fact is, we do not know the truth. History is written by the victors, and Ned Kelly was a character who was demonized by the law and became something more. There are many stories in history where mostly innocent people were portrayed as devils, only to become half of the demon they were convicted of being. I'm sure Ned Kelly wasn't a saint, but I do think he was wronged by the law back in the days. And quite frankly, I don't care whether or not he spoke Irish or Australian or whatever. I wasn't there. No one alive was, and this is not a reason to bring down an okay movie in such a way. Check that. This is the second Italian movie from 1969 named Satyricon. This one is directed by Gianluigi Palladera, who eventually bit the dust and renamed this movie The Degenerates due to the fact Fellini's version is way more famous, making it almost impossible to find this film without finding Fellini's one. At least not if you don't know the director. Anyways, Satyricon once again brings us the story loosely based on Petronius's writings about an impotent man and his lover, portrayed by a girl in this movie as to not shock the viewers, even though there's plenty of other stuff to shock about in this film. It even landed some people in prison. We follow this impotent man from the streets of Rome to other places, all pretty much either for survival or the fact he really wants to stick his rod into someone. The most lengthy section of the movie portrays one of the infamous Roman bacchanals where groups of men and women indulge in wine, food and sex, occasionally leaving to put two fingers in their mouths so they can start over. A fascinating ritual of endless parties by Senator Pomponius, who fakes earthquakes and his own death just to have fun. The scene alone, minus the vomiting, made me wish I could experience such a bacchanal, but alas, as a robot in modern times it is not for me. Help springs eternal though. Satyricon is a competent movie but far less interesting than the Fellini movie. I didn't even recognize most of the story beats from this movie in comparison with the Fellini one, so I don't even consider it to be part of the same story, even though it is, as both show us in Colpius and H.O.T.S story. Of course I didn't read the original Petronius manuscripts, who as stated in the Fellini review are incomplete and fragmented, so I'm sure both pick their darlings to use in their films. Overall, both Satyricon movies are worth a watch, and one might even do well to combine them in a way like I did, seeing both Polidoro's version as well as Fellini's consecutively. Check that. Caught in Time is a 2020 Chinese movie about cops chasing robbers and vice versa. We follow a ruthless gang of bank robbers, led by Danielle Wu, who are not only extremely intelligent in their heist but also pretty violent, shooting people methodically and without flinching. A dutiful cop, played by Wang Kai-Yuan, is hot on their tail but cannot capture them before they disappear, until they return and strike again. This movie is based on the real-life gang led by Jiang Jun, who was dubbed China's #1 outlaw, and performed multiple robberies in the 90s only to get caught in the 2000s and executed. After having seen plenty of modern Chinese movies, I can safely say that this is very much a modern Chinese movie. And with that I mean that there's a constant vibe of duty, servitude and other things that can increase your credit score so you can actually do something in life. Except for the robbers, of course. They just do whatever they want. And that's bad. You know, really bad. Don't get me wrong, killing innocent people is bad, but the movie is so full of subtle and not so subtle propaganda that you're rooting for the robbers. At least I was. It became especially so when, at the end of the movie, there was a little note saying that due to this time period and Jun's actions, the great Chinese government decided to ban weapons, making China the safest place on earth. Okay. I don't really believe that, but okay. Anyways, political crap aside, Caught in Time is a competent movie mixing the heist genre with a minor love story. It looks cool for the most part, besides some special effects being a bit weird, but the duty stuff just doesn't work for me as a Western robot and reeks of propaganda and manipulation. Check this movie out and see for yourself. It's not a waste of time. No, you'll be caught in time. Haha. See what I did there? I have my moments. Check that.